Womp womp. Good evening. Well, Parker, iPhone, welcome. Christian, Yori, Linda, welcome, welcome. Oh, everybody have a good weekend. Yeah, there's some interesting flow going through to SoFi longs. They have ER in the morning. Oh, that's about all I've noticed though. Uh did I? I think I did. I think I bought a cheaper. I bought a cheapo and then I sold it on Friday at the open for like 40% or something like that. Welcome, welcome. But SoFi isn't one that I typically trade either. That was just solely on flow. Uh, so not something that I typically like to swing if it's not something that I trade a whole lot. Yeah, the problem with the high risk trade tab that we had was people were blowing up their ports because they would uh, think that they try to use it to get themselves rich overnight and then blow up their money and then have the audacity to blame us for it. So we just stopped doing it. Yeah, I don't have any more of the sci-fi, the sci, the sci-fi. Hello, attorney Dan. Since we have an attorney here, this is not financial advice. I am not a financial planner, a fiduciary, or any of the such. Uh, so we've got about 17 people in here right now. We're usually running about 30 to 40. So I'll give it another minute just to see if anybody comes in. There's probably going to be a decent amount of. I'd be looking at Intel this week, maybe next week. Give it a few more days for that bad ER to settle. But with them pushing for domestic chip production, I would definitely be looking at longing some more semiconductors, and Intel is going to be one of those that's been around a while, and uh, they're pretty beat up. So, buy iPhone. No, it's not related to bull trades. Uh, Eva Panda is a independent contractor that is here doing her stuff with our group as well. Right. Well, let's get rolling here. This is the Sunday night market scan. This is where we take a look at the heavy hitters of the week in the markets to kind of get an idea of where we might be headed as far as just a general idea in the markets. If you want to know where SPY is going, you got to look at what's in SPY and see how that price is reacting on those big heavy hitters. We have a big earnings week this week. There's going to be a lot of volatility. A lot of technicals are going to go out the window. So just keep that in mind, especially with NFP and unemployment. And there was another economic news thing too. So this is where we look at some of the big ones, the big stocks in the indices that we look possibly take some trades on. I will go ahead and say once again, this is not financial advice. I am not a financial planner. Do your own due diligence. You are responsible for your own actions. In no way is anything that I say a signal to buy or sell a security. And that's not just because we have an attorney in the group. That is because it is true. I want you guys and gals and non-binary pals to know that we're here to try and help build traders, not just be a signaling group. So it is your decision. I will go over what I see in the markets. I will go over the setups that I'm looking at. One of the big setups I use, I'm going to just blow through it here at the beginning so we're all aware of it. I look at trend bar gaps, which is a gap created between a previous candle's high and the subsequent candle's low, creating a gap between the two candles, like right here. So between this candle's high and this candle's low, creates a gap with this trend bar. One of the setups I really like watching is the 3 trend bar gap, where you get a breakaway and a measuring and an exhaustion gap, and then we look for a pullback into one of those 3, usually the measuring. If we get a pullback all the way into the breakaway, things tend to get a little murky. But that is exactly what we've been watching on Apple here. We got the exhaustion, the reversal through the order block, the bounce at the midpoint of this trend bar gap, the measuring gap, and now we're getting the bounce up. Okay. So let's take a look at the markets. It's my little bumper music. I hope you enjoy it. Apple did get a nice big push up and then got a big slap down. It is currently filling out this long very nicely from the long that we took here at 182 and 3/4, getting that nice big push up. This would now be a good time where I would shore up my stop a bit just to increase that risk to reward, since we're so far into profits here on this trade. I still think Apple wants to try and take out 200. Their earnings is going to be very interesting. They have not been they've been having some issues with their product line and development in China, and people, I mean, it feels kind of like people are sick of paying $1,000 for an iPhone when it's just last year's model with an extra button, or it's, you know, it's a tenth of an inch shorter or longer. They've got their Google goggles or whatever, not their Google goggles, their Apple goggles or whatever they're calling them, coming out soon, but those are a pretty high price point. I don't know if it's going to be enough to get them going. They also have had some murmurings about their Apple Car as well being revived in the last week or so. So something to keep an eye on. This is going to be a big one with guidance. I'm a little hesitant to get into an Apple long right now. This is not something that I would feel comfortable getting into a long right now. I'm currently in a long, and I'll keep it like that. But I don't know if I would add any more right now, just because of the increased volatility that's going to be coming around their earnings right now, and speculation as far as the future profitability of Apple. AMD has been on an absolute tear recently. And one thing I really noticed about this chart is it it ripped. It felt followed the three gap system, and it took off, and it took off hard. And in addition, we got this nice candle here pushing up on the week, and it bounced right off the previous all-time high and pushed up to a new high on the week. Semiconductors have been absolutely ripping through the market right now. I think a lot of it has to do with China and the issues with Taiwan and the large push to get domestic semiconductor production online, which is going to be huge for the US if we can actually get that up and running, and we can reduce our reliance on Taiwan and China and other outside markets for our semiconductor production. So AMD, NVIDIA, they're all going to be basically doing the same thing. I think they're going to continue pushing up. I don't think semiconductors have a pullback quite yet. SMCI, we're watching right now. We got earnings coming up as well. They got a big rip based on basically like they said their guidance is going to be better than it was projected to be, and they got a big rip up. I don't know if they get another rip out of their earnings, because this is the market pricing in what they think their earnings could be based on the news that they put out. So I don't know if we're going to get a rip. We might get a push over 500, but I don't know if we get quite the 300 to 460 over a few day kind of a move like it already put in. We might even get a sell the news event and get a pullback. So SMCI isn't something that I would really look to be trading longs on right now, just because of the fact it's already up so big on increased perception of what their earnings is going to be. And it's at a point where it could very easily, like their earnings could very easily be underwhelming for the news and the move that it's already made, and you could get a pretty big snapback. So just keep an eye out on that. I would definitely be watching NVIDIA, and just I think it's going to be the one that carries the markets going forward this week. Amazon does have earnings coming up. I don't know if it's this week. It's coming up first day of February, according to this here charty. We finally got the push over the 6-month gap that I'd been watching for a while. Where is it? There it is. Finally got the push through. We took some shorts in here coming out of this gap. Got a nice move to the downside. And now we finally got the move up, and then we pushed through and closed above this 6-month gap. And this gap is identified here on the 6-month chart for the trend bar gap from this wick to this wick. Now we're getting the close above. So I'm actually going to be looking for a small pullback on more of a, this is a 6-month chart. So you're looking at a longer time frame move. So if I go down to the daily, I mean, I might even look for like a retest of 155 before it tries to take out 160 again and push up. So I would keep an eye on Amazon. I'm still bullish on it. I'd be looking for a little bit of a pullback before it tries to rip to the upside. That push above and then the knock back down on Friday was a bit concerning as far as continuing to stay above 160. I think 160 was a big mental number, and the fact that it couldn't close above it shows that we could see some weakness in Amazon, at least for the first few days. And then we'll see how the market reacts to everybody else's earnings on the big boys this week. Big boy earnings we do have this week are going to be, we've got Microsoft on Tuesday. We've got AMD as well as Google on Tuesday, Boeing on Wednesday. Qualcomm is going to be another one you're going to want to watch for semiconductors. Like QCOM on your list as far as beat up semiconductor companies in the boomer sector. Let's see what else we got. Apple, Amazon, Meta, Atlassian, all reporting on Thursday, as well as Merrick and a bunch of other boomer stocks like Tractor Supply and Honeywell. So those might also be something to keep an eye on. And then Exxon and Chevron and AbbVie coming in on Friday. So the Dow is looking to make probably a decent move here come the end of the week. So we'll take a look at that as well. But Amazon does have, I mean, according to this graphic, Amazon's earnings are Thursday. Is Thursday already February 1st? No way. Wow, Thursday's already February 1st. Okay. In my mind that was like 3 weeks away, but it's not 3 weeks away. It's literally this next week. So Amazon, I'm thinking we'd still get that little pullback maybe Monday, Tuesday, and then we'll see how the market digests Microsoft and Google. And then Thursday we'll get the Apple and the Amazon and the Meta, and that'll basically give us the direction for the rest of the week, I think, going into next week as well. Boeing has been having so many issues. We got the short. It's been panning out. I was looking for a long here, didn't get it, and it ended up getting stopped out. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I was really looking for a move back up to this gap from the weekly. We haven't gotten that yet. I'm going to go ahead and remove this trade here as well, since it's already panned out. But it's finding support in this monthly gap, which is big. The only concern I have is that it looks like well, no, that's not even a concern because this is an old retracement. So it's finding support here. Volume is still here. Earnings is coming up on Wednesday. They've been having ridiculous issues. They keep popping up in the news on silly things. Their whole like 737 line has been grounded at this point. So just keep an eye on the news for them. I would like to see a move back up to this weekly gap for a short when or if it gets up to that weekly gap. How should we be playing these earnings? Here's how I would be trading these earnings. For instance, we'll take a look at Microsoft. Microsoft is pushing up into all-time highs. It's over 400. It's been on a complete tear recently because they are a money juggernaut, in addition to the fact that they are leading the way as far as AI, and they're Microsoft. How I would be playing these earnings, a lot of them I would not be trading, mostly because the market has been on such a ridiculous rip. Microsoft has been consolidating up here on a smaller time frame. You can see this area right here where it's been just moving sideways the past few days over its previous swing high, just chugging along here. I would actually be looking for a pullback. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen in their earnings, but as far as how to trade them, I would be looking at lower time frame on the 5-minute, and then be looking for support lines, and I would be aiming for those. So like, for instance, if price comes down to this area where we've been consolidating, maybe breaks below, comes up and touches into earnings, maybe I look at a long around short around 395. That's where this previous low was here, from Tuesday, the lunch session right here. So around 395, and that's maybe the contract that I would pick up. And it would be a 0-day contract. It would be far out the money. It would be as little upfront capital as possible that I would feel comfortable trading. I'd be looking at maybe 1 to sub 5% of your trading portfolio, sub 5% of my trading portfolio, going into an earnings trade on a 0-day options contract. Anything over that, first off, earnings is about as close to a gamble as you can get when it comes to trading the market. So if I'm putting any more than I'm willing to lose, it's ridiculous. I'm not going to put in any more that I'm willing to lose on an earnings trade. So how I would play this earnings would be putting in sub 5, probably closer to 1% of my trading portfolio in an options contract. And if this 395 put, if this is the price action we get, and this 395 put is more than my more than 1 or 2% of my trading portfolio, it's not a trade I'm taking. Like, so many people use options to try and get rich quick overnight, and it's not worth it. So that's how I would trade the earnings. I would use sub 5, closer to 2 or 1% of my trading portfolio into a target. Since we're here on Microsoft, it is consolidating here. Zoom out to the weekly. So we got the 2 gaps up. Now we got another gap up right here, and it's been pushing. Okay, got the break from the wedge, the push over the previous high with the trend bar gap. I'm almost thinking on a weekly scale, it pushes up even further, possibly over 420 into 425. I'd like to see a large move coming out of earnings if they're good. They're leading in AI. They are Microsoft. They just bought Activision and fired almost 2,000 people, which is bullish. If you don't know, when you see a large tech company doing layoffs, that is a bullish sign for their stock price. And with semiconductors being tied to AI, if we're going to see semiconductors start to surge, we're also going to see Microsoft and big tech start to surge. So again, with earnings coming up, it's going to be about guidance. It's going to be about AI and semiconductors. So usually, for the most part, I try to look for somewhat of a trade going into these, but because these companies are so big and because we've got their earnings coming up this week, I'm going to be a bit more hesitant to look at a trade as far as actually putting my money into these companies on an earnings trade. Okay, if that makes any sense. So Microsoft pushing into all-time highs. The weekly, I would like to see a big move above the previous week. So above 406 would be a possible trigger for me to get into a long on a day trade to see how far it can push. I would like to see a big move. I'd like to see it in the morning, or I'd like to see it heading into close. Okay. If it happens during midday, I'd be pretty skeptical about it. And if it happens in pre-market, which it may or may not happen, I'm looking at futures right now. We're actually below Friday's close. So if it gets up there, I doubt it before market opens, but you never know. The markets could go on a rip overnight. They do it all the time. All right, heading over to coin. Coin, I expect to see continued downside. We've triggered the short to the downside. I expect it to keep going to around 70. I would like to see volume increasing here on the weekly. This is a very weak candle for price action. It didn't take out a high. It didn't take out a low. It had a very small body. So we might see a little bit of some sideways action going here on coin until it decides to make a move. But we are right below this 50% of this big move. It wouldn't surprise me if we continue to see some downside. We did get this gap on the monthly. We pushed in, rejected it already. I would like to see continued. I would like to see maybe one little push up and then some down moves right here. Okay. But I have a target on coin down to 70 right now. That is the trade that I am in and I am currently watching. Meta, I think, is going to continue up. Unfortunately, I say that it's a personal opinion. I don't like this company. I don't like the way they treat their products, which are you and me, or anybody else who uses their platform. I would appreciate if they had a little bit more candor when it comes to treating people's information properly, but they don't, and that's the reason why they are profitable. So going forward, they're getting a big move up. They've just been on this rip since they dipped below 100. If you've been with us long enough, we were watching Meta go into 100, and we were saying you should be looking at Meta right now. And of course, they ripped, and they haven't stopped yet. They've had 2 red months since November 2022. They're just completely going, and I think they are going to keep going. And I think we're going to see Meta probably at 600 by summer, maybe before. That's how I feel about Meta, unfortunately. Personal opinion. Nvidia, I think we're still going to continue seeing some upside. I would like to see a little bit of consolidation here. This monthly chart is a bit crazy. We've been moving ridiculous sizes up, big moves up. We got the breakaway gap on the weekly. Then we've got the measuring gap here. Now, it's called a measuring gap for a reason. So I'll take a line from this last swing low right here, bring it up to the, that's not a line, that's a fib retrace. I'll take a line here from this last swing low, bring it up to the midpoint of this measuring gap. I'm going to duplicate it. And then I will measure going up further, essentially. And this would be the price target I'd be watching on NVIDIA right now. Right around 670 is the price that I would be looking at. Yeah, I'll take a look at Square. If anybody else has any tickers they want me to check out, toss them in the chat. I'll add them to the list, and we'll get there. But NVIDIA, based on this setup, based on this Al Brooks gap theory, we'll get to IWM. It's on the list. Thank you. I would like to see a move up to 670, 669.04, a move over it, and then a pullback. Okay. So NVIDIA, new setup over these previous highs. Looks like it's going to continue up. I no doubt we're going to actually see it continue up. Roku got this nice bounce out of this gap that I was watching here. So we've got the breakaway, the measuring, and the exhaustion gap. We got the price pull back into the larger time frame, this breakaway gap on the monthly. Excuse me. If you heard that, I apologize. And that's exactly where it bounced. That's exactly where I wanted to take my long, and that's where I took it. My only concern right now is last week's price action was not the greatest. It hasn't been able to push above this weekly measuring gap, and it did get a push back down. But this is something that I'm in. It's something that I'm currently watching. I am expecting a move back up to the 100s and 108s, and currently in a long on Roku, and I don't see any reason why I should cut it at the moment. So I'm still long on Roku. Tesla. If you were with us last week, I said look for a bounce into sub 180, and we got down to 180 and 6 pennies, and we bounced a little bit. I would really like to see a long as this pushes into this flag, this down channel right here. Well, no, it's not even a flag. It's basically a down channel. I would like to see it push down below 180 into maybe 175. If it can get down there, never mind the highlighted numbers. Those are all lines that are making things harder to see a little bit here. But yeah, I would like to see it push down into 175 or so. And I think we're going to find some buyers if it starts pushing below 180. And that's where I would look to take a long. And I would trade a long back up to the top of this top trend line right here. If you're not into swinging Tesla, which it doesn't surprise me if you are not, their contracts are a bit ridiculous as far as price is concerned, but it would be something to watch for day trade coming out of sub 180 prices. I would watch for volume showing up prior to 10 a.m. Or the power hour end time. Definitely before 10 a.m. though. So if price drops below 180 before 10 a.m., I want to see increased volume, and I want to see it more than the previous days. So you can see the previous day's volume here as it's been pushing down. If it drops below 180, I want to see volume over the previous few days morning volume, if that makes sense. That would show me that there's an interest below 180. I still think Tesla wants to make a push down. We're only on 2 days after their bad earnings. The more of the saving graces, we got an inside day, lower volume on Friday. I think it wants to make a continuation move to the downside and then push back to the upside. So keeping an eye on Tesla for an initial downside move below 180, buyers below 180 to 175 for a push back up. That's what I'd be watching on Tesla. Let's head over to the indexes. SPY has not gotten that pullback to the previous price target that we were watching yet. It is basically just chilling right now. We were looking at a possible, it was this an intraday head and shoulders. Yeah. That ended up playing out, just got a little wonky, but it did eventually go. So that's what a wonky head and shoulders looks like on S&P. But SPY, I mean, it's holding its own out here above 186. It's going to be dependent on how the rest of the markets go right now. Just looking at their chart right now, it seems like it wants to continue up. So, but with a little bit of hesitancy. Qs, I'm guessing, are going to look the same, even worse. That's a big that's a weaker candle on the weekly chart right here. We did get a trend bar gap, which was nice over this previous all-time high. So we'll see if it wants to continue, but we're in exhaustion level of this previous move. So I'd be a bit hesitant to go long right now. As far as the index is looking, IWM currently in a short on IWM, as we've been watching this ranged area for a while now. As it pushed up into here, we took a short up into 204, and we're seeing it come back down. It did find a little bit of a bounce, but I think it wants to continue to the downside. We'll see if we get follow through coming in. I don't think it's time for small caps yet. I think small caps are waiting to see what mega caps do. And depending on how the big tech companies push up their earnings, we'll see whether or not small caps react to it. But right now, looking at the small cap stocks, their charts are so beat up. Their price targets, their prices have been completely just demolished over the past year, which we can see here in IWM as it came down from 243 down to the 163s. So these previous arrows here, we're saying if we see a bounce above these previous highs, I would be bearish. And if we see a continuation to the downside and this trade pan out into this imbalance down here, then I would look for a long to the upside. But right now, small caps, I'm in a short. I'm expecting it to continue going short. I don't think we're getting into small caps quite yet. I think we might have to wait even and maybe a little bit longer into 2024 to see if investors are going to start picking up small caps. Diamonds have been on a rip. We've been on a long, or we were looking for a long for a retrace into this trend bar gap. We didn't get it. Boomer stocks just keep pushing up. Boeing's got earnings on Wednesday, and we've got oil companies, Phillips 66 on Wednesday, as well as Exxon and Chevron on Friday. So those are going to affect the diamonds and the rest of the boomer stocks. And right now, let's just take a look. Right now, oil's on a gap up with a downside gap fill. So what's that mean? That means oil gapped up, filled its gap to the downside, and is now pushing back up. And I mean, this is going to be what if you want to trade Exxon, Chevron, and Phillips 66 in the boomer stocks, oil is going to be a pretty big something that you're going to want to watch. And right now, it's been on a complete rip. since around January. It's just been continuing to go up, found support at this previous high, and then just shot straight up. Oil is an inflationary hedge typically when it comes to economic stuff, and with non-farm payrolls this week and unemployment, if we're seeing oil rip into that news and prior to that news, then I would be pretty suspect of possible fears of a recession coming in if we're seeing oil make this big of a move on the year so far. Okay. How does that affect the diamonds and the Dow Jones and the oil companies? Well, their main product is oil, and if we see oil going up, that means their profits are going to go up. If they're more profitable, their earnings are probably going to be a bit better, And if their earnings are better, that means the Dow could possibly carry big tech and S&P depending on the earnings of those big oil companies. So keep an eye on oil. I think we might see a big push over $80. We might even see a return to $100 oil. So just kind of keep an eye on that. I'm probably not going to look at Emmanuel. I'm sorry. I'm not much of a crypto person. Grizzlies is our crypto guy, but I mean, I don't typically look. The only crypto I look at is Bitcoin, and that's so I can make decisions based on Coin and Mara and Riot stocks. But all right, heading into some banks. Banks keep on a rip here. Goldman Sachs hasn't broken out yet. It's consolidating here. I really expected it to come back down, and it did get a bit of a down move, but no follow through. It got a big bounce up, and right now it's just staying here. It's staying here, not moving right below that low. Morgan Stanley, on the other hand, did get a big push down and completed the short to the downside, and now it's getting that bounce back up. So taking a look at banks, if banks are something you trade, it's just they keep going up with possible recession fears. It's a little weird that banks would continue to push up, but who knows? Maybe that means rates are going to stay higher for longer, and the banks can make a bit more money on their longer term investments, which is why we're seeing the price go up. Netflix, big rip coming off of earnings, big move. I really did not expect them to get back over 500. I was looking for a short coming out of there, and they done proved me wrong. So I apologize for that. But let me just delete some of these lines so they're not all in the way. Netflix, big rip. The next level here is this 585, and we'll call it 585 and 3/4. I would look for a possible short coming off of that level, but right now with that big of a move on a weekly chart, I think they might have a chance to go back up to 700. They just signed the new deal with TKO Holdings to get WWE programming on their platform. It was a $5 billion deal that they did with them. In addition to that, their subscriber count has really gone up a lot more than expected, which is going to increase revenue. And it's looking pretty good for Netflix now. I really didn't think that they would get above 500, and they did, and they shot above it, and they have just continued to push up. So if you're trading Netflix, if you're holding Netflix, I'm thinking that they probably continue up. Disney is trying to get that push back up here. I really wanted it to come down here to February 2016 lows, but it got a break out of this flag. I'm actually just going to delete this since we don't need it anymore. This didn't happen. So I'll delete that. Currently in the long here, back up to 86 and a half, or 96 and a half, waiting for that to continue playing out. And we'll see if we get a double top and a reversal, or if it can blast through that price. So I'm still long on Disney right now. PayPal got the big move up coming out of this wonky inverted head and shoulders, and then got a big slap down. It pushed down below my stop, but it didn't close below my stop. It closed directly at it. Uh, I really would like to see it push back up into 70, possibly 71. Um, but they do have earnings coming up on the 7th. So that's not this week, but next week. But any momentum they get to the upside immediately gets met by some downside push. So it's starting to fill this gap right now. I don't know, honestly. Right now on PayPal, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I want to take a trade on PayPal right now. There's a lot of increased volume. Technicals are not lining up, and it just doesn't look like something that I'd want to take a long on. ExxonMobil getting a rip out of these lows. Nice move right off the 618, right off it, double wick, right off 95.98. And then the big push up with oil moving up. I think we might see Exxon continue to move to the upside along with Chevron, which I do believe is CXV, CVX. Also a big, nice push coming out of these previous lows. I would expect to see oil and oil companies continue to push up. Speaking of Netflix and TKO, they got a big move coming out of that deal. We're immediately met by sellers after some internal controversy with their former CEO. Since then, he has resigned and he's no longer involved in the company. So I think we might see a bounce here. Hello, Hemley. Appreciate you coming out tonight. I would honestly think that it tries to push up here. The only problem with TKO is that their options chain is not very liquid. So I prefer to hold shares on TKO. Yeah, no problem. I mean, I'm a personal fan of the product. That's just me. But you do you, you know. SoFi has been beat down pretty hard over this year, or over 2023, and now we're going into 2024 and we're pulling back up. They do have earnings on Monday, so it's late to get into a trade right now. But there has been some bullish flow on SoFi, actually quite a bit of bullish flow. My only concern is on the daily here, we're getting increased sell volume going into earnings while price is coming down. A positive sign is we got this big sell volume and price did not move nearly as much as, say, here on Wednesday. We got the bigger move down on the lower volume. Now we have the higher volume and the movement is not as big. You would expect to see, or I would expect to see, with the increased volume here, a price move similar to this, but it did not push down to like 723. It stayed there. So that tells me, paired with the options volume that's been coming through, maybe we see a move to the upside on SoFi. If banks are going to continue to push, maybe SoFi is going to start pushing up as well. So I'm skeptically bullish on SoFi. Google, I'm actually going to move up here because they belong up here on the list. But they are pushing into those previous all-time highs, and they set new highs as well. I'm expecting Google to essentially flag out here, but they do have earnings coming up, so we'll see what happens. Their earnings is on Tuesday. They have an inside candle right now from the previous day. Looking at the weekly, it's been on a nice rip to the upside over those previous highs. I can't help but be bullish on Google. They seem to have the money to bankroll their AI stuff, and they tend to do things better than other companies do. So we were long into 130. We got the move up. We're into the 150s now. I'm expecting it to continue going up, to be honest. As Starbucks also has earnings coming up here, I think I can't be bullish on Starbucks, honestly. I don't think people have quite come back from the high inflation numbers that we've been dealing with and the higher cost of literally everything that we're still dealing with. So I think we're gonna. I think we see some downside in Starbucks on earnings. That's my own personal opinion. I don't think that they are going to be able to match sales that they've been matching. So that's my opinion on Starbucks. I think they're going to come down. Where are they going to come down to? I mean, they're at a. I'd be shooting for probably around 89 to 85 for a downside target on Starbucks there. AMD bullish. We touched on that earlier, but we're hitting new all time highs. Semiconductors are on a rip. I'd be watching Nvidia. Um, Nvidia is going to be your leader in the chips. So, if you want to know what AMD is going to do, watch Nvidia. And if you start seeing Nvidia make moves to the upside with high volume and quick moves, you could be long, and I would be long AMD at the same time. Rivian, every time I trade Rivian, it takes my money. Uh, I dislike trading this company. Every time I think they're going to make a move, they don't. um, the problem with Rivian and the 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 EV companies is they just don't. If you're not Tesla, you're almost nobody. Um, I've started to see more Rivian cars on the road in my area. I haven't seen any Lucid cars in my area at all, but I have seen some Rivians. It could just be like the same person who owns like 3 cars driving them around. Who knows? Uh, but I have seen them. They're not nearly as prevalent as Teslas, but I do see them around. The problem is like they don't seem to be able to get any action coming out. I mean, they had this nice harmonic setup here, and they got the little push up, and then some hesitation, and then I bounced. Then I finally got the push up, and then we got a cup and handle, and then a dump to the downside, and it's just been dumping ever since. I really just don't. I don't really see the value in the company quite yet. Um, they don't seem to be able to get anything going, in my opinion. So, uh, as far as what I'd be looking for on Rivian, I'd be looking for continued downside. On the weekly chart, we've got sell volume going up, price going down. We're going into lows right now. It would make sense that we probably see a breakdown below 15 into the 14s and possibly 13s on Rivian. Yeah, I'll circle back around Hemley later. Qualcomm has been on a nice rip. Also, one of those names that I told you with the surge in semiconductors coming up. Uh, One of those older boomer stocks. I think they are not hitting all time highs. Like they're nowhere near their all time high right now. They're still about $40 off of their all time high. So they're a bit more beat up. Same with Intel. Um, they did just have that bad earnings, but I think we're going to have, I think they're going to be one of those companies where as we get domestic semiconductors online, Intel is going to be at the top of the list. Whether or not they're the right one for the job is not my decision to make. Uh, but they've been around long enough, and they have the lobbying and the clout to say, "Hey, we'll go ahead and take you up on that offer." So as the U.S. pushes into domestic semiconductor production, I think Intel and Qualcomm are going to be sleeping giants in that sector, and I think we might see some money rotating into them over the next few weeks, possibly months. All right. If anybody has any tickers they want me to look at, any more of them, add them, and I will circle back through Meta. Meta, I expect to continue up. I'd like to see it push into 420. Long term, I think it's just going to continue up. Uh, my only concern is that volume is dying on the larger time frame as we're pushing up, so we might get a pullback. But honestly, Meta, there's no reason to think why they don't stop right now. They just keep going. CLF, can't Carvana, Western Digital. I'll add those. Right, the whole market is feeling semi bullish, in my opinion. I think the market is a little hesitant heading into these mega cap earnings right now. Uh, I mean, we're pushing over all time highs. As far as being bearish, uh, you mean like a big downtrend like we got coming out of 2021 into 2022? That type of bearish, I don't think we see that right now. I think we might see some pullbacks going forward, but in my opinion, there's nothing stopping this market right now. With inflation seemingly coming down, yes, there is a looming threat of a recession, but a recession, I don't think is enough to tank the market. It may be enough to uh, create issues in the housing market, but I don't think it's enough to tank the market. I'm bearish on Airbnb. I don't see it, especially with house prices. Um, I would just I would be looking for shorts on Airbnb. I don't like that company right now. I don't see the value in it, especially with the lockdown in the housing market and nothing moving. I don't like it. It doesn't make sense to me to put money into it right now. Maybe if the housing market cool or starts to heat up and houses become more liquid and prices start coming down and companies can start buying up homes again and fixing them up and renting them out, great. But right now, I think Airbnb is stagnant, and I don't think it's going to do much. So that's my take on that. So I think we're going to continue up on SPY. I don't think we're going to be seeing a bear market anytime soon, unless there's some sort of black swan event, which inherently, based on the type of a black swan event, is something you don't see coming. Uh, Obviously, there's no way I could see it coming. So right now, I'm expecting the market to continue up. Short term pullback, long term continue up. Same with the Qs. Uh, Tesla, I assume, is what you meant by that. Um, Tesla, I'm looking to come down. I'm bullish under 180 into 175. I think we might see some buyers coming in around there. Helmy, sorry. Cleveland Hills or Cleveland Cliffs, sorry. I was really looking for this to make a larger move to the upside, and it just hasn't yet. Um, I mean, as far as the chart looks, the chart is not really. I mean, I don't really like anything I'm seeing as far as the chart. It's not really giving me a whole lot of market structure. There's no market structure shifting. There's no flags or pennants or channels or any of that really happening here. There's a lot of this big push up here and then the pullback off of it. I mean, this big push up stopped out everybody over the past year from March of 2023. And then it basically flagged and then broke to the downside and came down. So, and just based on that, I think Cleveland Hills is probably, or Cleveland Cliffs is probably going to continue to the downside in the longer term. But coin, I am bearish to 70. I think it continues to the downside based on their chart. We're down below the 50% of this. We've already rejected this gap from the monthly. It very much seems to me like it wants to make a return down to the 70s. So Canva has had some bullish options flow coming through, but again, the chart is just wonky, kind of all over the place. Not a whole lot of volume sustaining these moves to the upside. So I'm not exactly sure what they're all about. I don't really see a whole lot of people wanting to buy used cars right now, just because of the price of them. So I think that might be, uh, a telltale sign for what might be coming for their earnings coming in late February here, or maybe heading into it. But I mean, I just don't see the value in Carvana right now. So I would look to downside. on that, to be honest. Western Digital had a whole lot of longs coming out of here. Actually, it was coming out of here into January. Or was it? It was in December. The 60 longs got picked up and they just push. And then right before earnings, right before these earnings here on Thursday, a lot of those 60 calls were cashed out for like, I don't know, ridiculous percentages, a couple 100%. And now we're seeing the pullback. So I think we might see continued pullback to the downside. Anything else in their options float didn't really strike me as much as people were long in December up to 60. And as we approached coming into these earnings, they took profit on a lot of that stuff. So obviously they weren't expecting continuation to the upside, which would mean a possible price reversal. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. Big old bearish candle on the weekly here, big push up, and then a push back to the downside. It is buy volume here, but I think it's going to continue. At the very least, it's going to fill this gap. I think this next week. I think it fills this gap. And if it can get a market structure shift on a larger time frame here, I think it might return down to the 40s. But I'd be looking for at least a short-term pullback this next week, and then we'll see what price wants to do. You were expecting a larger push on crypto in general after the ETF approval. Yeah, a lot of people were wrong. You weren't the only one. A lot of people were really bullish on the ETF approval, and it was very much a sell the news event. And crypto has just been bleeding out ever since. There was a headline that I saw that Grayscale was moving a bunch of their Bitcoin into the exchanges so that they could dump it. So, I mean, let's take a look at Bitcoin right now. I mean, we're looking at a market structure shift right here on the daily. What is with these lines? Why are they all the way in Timbuktu? Get out of here. Get out of here with those. Get out of here with that. You can get out of here too. Oh, come on. There we go. All right. So we've got this last swing low here. And we got the push below it. Now we're getting the push back above. I think we're probably going to break back to the downside. And we can see that playing out on Riot and Mara, which just got Riot got destroyed going into these 16 prices. I felt like very bullish, and I thought it was probably going to return to 7. And so far we've got down. It got down to 9. What is that? 970 or so. Mara also taking a big hit. Volume picking up though a little bit here on the daily. Nice harmonic coming here out of the weekly. So it might get a little bit of a push up here, but I mean, not something that I'd be looking to trade, honestly. I'd be looking at Bitcoin, and Bitcoin right now is telling me that it wants to go back down. But I could very easily be wrong. Anybody got anything else? UPS earnings are this week. They are pretty beat up. I'm really expecting UPS to head down to the 120s. I think with oil going up, and that's going to increase the price of gas. FedEx said that they are looking for a very slow year heading into 2024 compared to previous years. And I think UPS is going to feel the brunt of that as well. I do think UPS is positioned better than FedEx. I do believe UPS handles their money a little bit better. So I'd be looking for some downside, but if I had to choose which company do I want to put an investment in, UPS would be my choice over FedEx. Apple, I think, wants to try 200, and I think we're going to try it here on earnings hype heading into Thursday. Broadcom, I think, is going to continue with the rest of the semiconductor stuff. It did have a kind of a bearish, a very weak candle here. So it might get a little bit of a pullback. I'd look for a pullback maybe into 11 or 1,140, and then look for a continuation. I'd look for this previous resistance here to become support. But this is basically the move I'd be expecting on Broadcom. Yes, it has. Yep. And we were looking at longs here around 818. And the setup, the trade was back up to 925. And not only did it get up to 925, it jumped over 925 and has taken out every deviation since then. It just keeps going. So I'm expecting it to keep going. SMCI, I think, might be a sell the news event. They got the big push up on anticipated better guidance, or what was it? Something like their guidance, their results on their guidance were going to be better than anticipated for their earnings, which is why we got the big rip to the upside. So when I see a move like that, I immediately flip into a pullback mode. I expect there to be a pullback coming off of that. So I think it might be a sell the news event. But again, as semiconductors, they could have some deal in the works. I don't know. That's not something that I would bother trading right now, unless I'd be looking at a pullback. But NVIDIA and AMD, same thing. NVIDIA doesn't seem to have any stop to it. AMD, maybe a little bit of a pullback. But I think AMD is going to do whatever NVIDIA does. So I would just be watching NVIDIA. Any hopes for space? I don't know. I haven't seen their chart in a while. $189 now? Nah. Nah, man. I think this chart is going to end up looking like SOS. And it's just going to, oh, square. Sorry about that. All right, square, we got the break to the downside, the breakaway gap, the measuring gap, the exhaustion gap, the price reversal back to the upside. Bada bing, bada boom. Got the rip. And now we're getting a pullback out of that. Let's take a look at the monthly here. See if we can see anything. Monthly here has a big gap to the upside. And we got the dip into that. We'll see if it can continue to the upside. But the month is finishing up. I would actually look for a possible pullback into this gap right now. Excuse me. Over this week, I would look for something like that. Let's take a fib measurement. Come out of here. Boom. That does line up pretty well with the 618 on the setup. So I'd be looking for a long right around 56 or so for a return up to 80. As a matter of fact, we'll do 55.13. I'll put an alert for a long. I like that setup. That's a nice setup. All right. Any other earnings I'm looking at? Taking a look at the list. Not really. Piton has earnings, so you could probably just buy puts and be fine. I'm sure their earnings is going to be a crapshoot. I would really like to see Piton like below 4, and at that price, look for a buyout. But there's no reason why this thing doesn't. I mean, it just got the rejection out of the monthly gap, coming to the downside, a little bit of a bounce. I'd just get puts on Piton. The only problem with this, I mean, the price is so low. Like it's got to make a big move for those options contracts to be pretty decent. So, who knows if it's really worth the risk to reward? Yeah, SoFi longs around what was it, 9? Let me just double check. Let's see. Someone's been hitting the SoFi February 23rd 8 calls. Sorry, not eights. Eights, not nines. And 12 calls, like ridiculously out the money on the 12 calls for the same or February 2nd. However, someone did come in and sweep up a bunch of 30,000 contracts of 7 puts for this week. So that might be a hedge. That might be a directional, but just something to keep in mind. So if I'm feeling a bit bullish on their chart, their options flow feeling a bit bullish as well. But if they're looking to, I mean, 7's not that far away. I don't know if it makes it. Maybe it gives a push down and then a pull up. But that is, let's see what else. We got the Intel 46.5 puts, but that was for earnings. SoFi. BP had some interesting call volume coming through last week. That might be something to keep an eye on. BP 35.5 calls for February 2nd. Had about had 13,000 volume on the 25th. 6,000 of it stayed, and then another 3,000. So either someone cut half of their position or they added. Something to keep an eye on there. BP, as in British Petroleum, 35.5 calls for February 2nd. Let's see what else. Not really. I mean, that's about all that piqued my interest. Not a whole lot coming through last week. This week's probably going to be a bit crazier with earnings coming up. I'll be watching the 0 days coming through as I can. There did look to be some Carvana February 2nd 70 calls getting hit on the ask at 8 cents. A lot of contract volume coming through on that, actually, as I'm seeing that. Was that heading? Yeah, that was heading into close. Just short of 12,000 contracts heading into close on the CVNA 70 calls for February 2nd on the ask. Around 78,000 in premium. Not a ton of premium as it moved almost 2 million in premium that day, Friday. So 78,000 in the grand scheme of 2 million is not a whole lot. But it's not nothing either. $78,000 is still $78,000. So yeah, I'm actually going to add that to my list. CVNA 70 calls for February 2nd. I might pick a few of those up. They might be beat up a little bit more on Monday. Shop. Shoppity shop. I mean, this thing broke to the downside of its channel and then just ripped back to the upside. Their earnings have been good just every month since November. So, I mean, based on that, I would expect them to continue up. Probably just some ebbs and flows here and there, but like long term, probably around 115s by the end of the year. That would make sense to me. Sienna. Nice little flag here on the day. Let's skip down to the 1 hour. See if it is actually a flag. Not so much. Eh. I mean, I'd be watching that trend line, that upper trend line here on the hourly. Sorry, I just took a drink of water. I didn't forget you guys existed. I'd be watching this trend line for a break above it, and maybe take a day trade above it to the 53, depending on when it breaks, if it breaks. But that would be the setup I'd be watching. Hmm. Tapestry TPR 45 calls from March 15th. Also, some interesting flow into Friday. They got hit at the open for 38 cents a contract, and then hit at the close again on the ask for 35 cents a contract. 202,000 put into the close. Something to take a look at. All right, Gustavo. Adios, homie. There's nothing else. I think we'll probably call her a night here. I will wait the standard 7 seconds. All right. As usual, if you have anything that you need to hit us up in the Discord, our support team is here to answer questions. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I appreciate you all for coming out and coming out week after week. And I hope this is somewhat beneficial. I hope you're finding trades, you're learning to look for stuff, price action moving. And really, I hope it's beneficial. Obviously, I don't think it would it would not be beneficial. If it wasn't beneficial, y'all wouldn't continue showing up. So thank you for continuing to do so. And yeah. All right. I hope everybody has a good week. And we'll see you in the Discord.